Hi everyone, welcome to another little weird video from yours truly. So, in this video, I'm going to be doing something here with this Intel Compaq, obviously. It's something that I have never done before, though that probably meant that, well, saying that I have kind of experimented with this shorthand and I have known about this beforehand, but we're going to see what happens when we switch these jumpers around, because these are the jumpers for the front side bus speeds, obviously, for this motherboard, obviously, and setting it one way or another can change that. So this thing can operate at front side bus speeds at 66 megahertz, 100 megahertz, and 133 megahertz. So between those, we could select either one, and there's actually a marking on the motherboard that lists all of the jumper settings that you have to do. Obviously, it's also outlined in the manual that I can find for this board online. You can look that up. But anyways, right now it's running at the stock frequency of 133 megahertz because this processor in here is a copper mine Pentium 3 at 933 megahertz, running at 133 megahertz front side bus speeds. Now, obviously, it's currently running at 133 megahertz front side bus speeds. It has the jumper set to jumper 7, JP7 on the motherboard. But what if we remove that and switch it to someplace else? Because otherwise, if I do remove that jumper, it'll still run at 133 megahertz. Well, for this processor anyway. But if I move this jumper somewhere, this small little jumper that you can see right here, you can't see it because it's out of focus, but if I move it to somewhere on the motherboard, so there's jumper 6, jumper 7, and jumper 8. So from looking within the board here, I can see Gobi, well, there's like Gobi and Intel or something like that on the motherboard from this etching that I can see. So for Intel 66, I put the well, for that I need to have jumper 6 and jumper 8 occupied with the jumpers, obviously. And then for Gobi 66, that's the same thing. For Gobi 100, I need to have one jumper at jumper 6. And then for Gobi 133, I'm going to leave all the jumpers in here without these kind of jumpers, obviously. So it'll run at 133 megahertz. Now, for Intel 100 and 133, this obviously goes into jumper 7. But what we're going to do here is we're going to be incrementing it down from 133 to 100 to 66. So first off, we're going to be running it at the normal frequency, front side bus frequency, at 133 megahertz, because that's what this board is shipped with and designed for, I guess. But it is designed for the frequencies though. So it's one jumper on jumper 7, and when we turn on the computer, we'll go ahead and show how many frequencies that we have as far as bus speeds and clock speeds go for the CPU. So let's go ahead and check that right now, shall we? Alright, so now I'm going to turn the computer on, and then we'll go into the BIOS so that we can quickly check to see our front side bus speeds and the clock rate of the CPU that's in this thing. So here we are in the BIOS. Let's go to system info. So we're running at 933 megahertz with 133 megahertz front side bus speeds. Now we'll go ahead and boot into Windows 98, obviously, to check our CPU and front side bus speeds from within there. I will also check it on the Windows 2000, obviously. So here we are, booting into Windows 98, my Windows 98 second edition with the Plus package installed on this partition, obviously. Now, I am in the process of, well, putting things back to where they were, obviously. I think just rearranging all the partitions and stuff and reformatting everything soon, because I am planning to do that at some point, and I kind of accidentally deleted all the backup stuff and some other partitions at one point. Obviously it only happened recently, but I'll be doing that at some other time. Anyway, here we are at the login screen. Now I'm just gonna hit escape on the login screen. And then once we're here, we'll go into hardware info. Like clicking that icon right up there, so that we can get some idea of the speed and such of the CPU. So let's go ahead and access there now. Click start, and then let us see what we have. Okay, so the active clock is running at 933 megahertz, and the multiplier is 7. And so we got the active clock is 933 megahertz, and front side bus speeds is at 133. So everything seems okay now, pretty much, as far as front side bus speeds go on this thing. And so now we'll go into Windows 2000 to check it up on CPU Z, obviously, because that only works on NT based systems, going I think as far back as NT4 if I'm not mistaken. I might be wrong about that, but CPU Z doesn't work on 9X systems because it was never made for those. Now we're just going to go into Windows 2000. Obviously, this is a fresh install of Windows 2000 I have on this partition, obviously. And I'll skip ahead over to the login sequence, so that way we don't have to wait. And here we are at the login screen of Windows 2000. Okay, we got CPU ID, CPU Z, and hardware info 32. So let's go ahead and check CPU ID, CPU Z here to identify the CPU clock speeds and stuff, and the CPU that's in here, obviously. No explanation for that, but so here we are, Intel Pentium 3, 933 megahertz at 133 megahertz front side bus speeds. Everything seems to be fine here as far as CPU goes, as far as CPU is concerned. And I'll also check it in hardware info 32 on this OS just for the sake of it. So we'll let it load here, obviously, once it scans for devices and such. Alrighty, here we are. And once again, we should be having a summary here. Well, 932 megahertz, 132 megahertz front side bus speeds. I don't see the active clock. There we go. I need to click that again so I can see this. So we're running at the same clock speed, 932 megahertz at 133 megahertz front side bus speeds with a 7 times multiplier, CPU multiplier. Everything seems okay and fine here. And now we're going to be shutting this thing down. And we'll go ahead and go back into the Compaq's main board, obviously, to change the jumper settings, so that we can pretty much do a thing of what we call downclocking the CPU. So let's go into that now. Alright, so now we're back at the Compaq's, Intel Compaq's main board. Now let's go ahead and see what happens when we switch out that jumper with a couple of other jumpers to plug in another jumper slots. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be basically, downclocking the system to a lower clock rate and frontside bus speeds, obviously. So right now it's currently set at 133 megahertz. However, if we do something like this, so let's say, so I'm looking at the inscription for the frontside bus speeds on this motherboard again. In the section under Gobi 100, we need to have jumper 6 have a jumper, and then all the other jumpers leave open without a jumper, basically. So I'm going to be moving this over to jumper 6. And what this basically does is it'll basically change the frontside bus speeds from 133 to 100. Well, you get the idea. We'll be getting into that pretty much in a bit, which is actually right now. Alright, let's power the Compaq back up and head ourselves into the BIOS again. Just for extra measure, by hitting F10 and going to System Info, look at that. There's our surprise. The processor speed is at 700 megahertz at 100 megahertz frontside bus speeds. So pretty much this is basically downclocking in a nutshell, pretty much. So what I did for my machine is I basically just switched a jumper to another jumper slot and pretty much just downclocked the system that way, pretty much. I'm pretty sure, I am certain it's different for each and every different computer out there, pretty much. Whether it be a different type of manufacturer or motherboard or whatnot. Either way, we have it downclocked to a 700 megahertz Pentium 3, obviously, running at 100 megahertz frontside bus speeds. So we'll go ahead and take a look ourselves into Windows 98 2nd edition, obviously. So within the OS, obviously. So we're going to be doing it like this. So we're going to be doing it in this fashion. We're going to be showing the information in the BIOS first, then showing the information within the OS, pretty much, which is what we're doing right here. So we're booting into Windows 98 2nd edition, which has the Windows 98 Plus package, as you can tell by this slightly modified boot screen, because I did add that Microsoft logo at the top right there, which was from an OEM install that came with this machine, that was made for this machine, obviously. That's a weird message, obviously. I mean, that is gonna get wiped out when I reformat pretty much everything on this and just, putting new OSs on it. I will back up all the data beforehand, but okay, so now we're going here, hardware info 32. Click start, and then let us see let us see the current rate. There it is. So right now it's running at like a slightly lower clock speed than its specified clocks that it's specified. So right now it's running at well, it reads at 702 or 701, but it's basically, we're running at 700 megahertz with a 100 megahertz frontside bus speeds. But the native clock rates and frontside bus speeds to the CPU are still, 932 megahertz at 133 megahertz frontside bus speeds, obviously. And the CPU multiplier is still at times 7, x7, whatever. But yeah, you can see there, we're running at a slightly lower clock rate. And we'll go ahead and reboot into Windows 2000 to check it out on CPU-Z and hardware info, obviously. Now, obviously, because we downclocked the CPU, or underclocked a CPU in this case, you know, underclocking the CPU does have some benefits, at least in the, you know, for example, in games that run at like, you know, at a clock speed, a lower clock speed that was designed for a lower clock speed, obviously. So, for instance, if you have an older game that is designed for that lower clock speed, and you try to run it on a modern CPU or a higher clock CPU, then it would run way too fast, obviously. So, in that sense, underclocking the CPU could potentially, you know, make you play the game as intended, you know, in certain cases, I think. But yeah. Either way, we're booting into Windows 2000 Professional. And let's go ahead and check CPU ID CPU-Z on here for us, so that we can basically check for ourselves, see what's different. So right now we are running at, it is detecting it as 700 megahertz. Well, now it's reading at 701, but it is 700 megahertz with a 100 megahertz frontside bus speeds. It's still identifying as a Pentium 3 copper mine, obviously. Still identifying it as a Pentium 3 copper mine 933 megahertz, obviously, because that's what this CPU is. But we downclocked it to a 700 megahertz Pentium 3 and 100 megahertz frontside bus speeds, obviously. So if we go into hardware info on here, we'll launch it. So yep, we got the same results here. So no surprises here. 700 megahertz, 100 megahertz frontside bus speeds. So yeah, now we'll go ahead and shut it down, and we'll downclock this CPU even more. I wouldn't say even further, but still, we're still downclocking the CPU somewhat. So yeah, basically, yeah, we downclocked it to a Pentium 3 700 megahertz, obviously. But now we're going to be downclocking it more, even more. I wouldn't say even further, but still. Let's go into that right now. Alright, and we're back with the Intel Compaq's main board, or motherboard, obviously, for the last time in this video. So, now what we're going to do, since we're going to be downclocking this even further, well, not likely, I'm going to be taking this jumper out, and I'm going to be putting the other two jumpers in. Now, according to the motherboard, obviously, that I'm looking at from here, under the section Gobi 66, I'm going to be putting, well, Gobi 66 and Intel 66 have the same kind of jumper layout. So, jumper 8 is going to have a jumper on that slot. So, I put one right there. And then jumper 6 is going to have a jumper on that slot too. So, I'm going to be putting that one right here. And then we'll get ourselves a big surprise, obviously, when we turn the computer on, which we'll go and do that right now. Alright, power it up. And we'll go into the BIOS first, just hitting F10 several times, because sometimes even that one press won't register. Alright, now let's go into system info and see our surprise. There it is! Surprise! We have processor speeds of 466 at 66 megahertz frontside bus speeds. Now, if that seems familiar to you, somewhat, well, that's because there is a processor out there that actually has that kind of processor speed. That's right, it's a Celeron, a Mendocino Celeron, to be in fact. It is one of the low-end Intel CPUs at the time, obviously, released in April of 1999, using this exact CPU socket, which is socket 370. Now, with all that out of the way, we are running a Mendocino Celeron 466 speeds, you know, CPU and frontside bus speeds, obviously. So let us go ahead into Windows 98 2nd edition and then Windows 2000, obviously, to check those speed changes ourselves. So we're going into Windows 98 2nd edition. You know, this boot screen never gets old to me, obviously. I've seen it many times, especially in you know, when I was in elementary school at one time, you know, in 2008, 2009-ish, pretty much, where they had in one of the rooms, in one of the classrooms, they had a laptop that ran this operating system, Windows 98 2nd edition, probably with the Windows 98 Plus pack, I'm not too sure. But I did use that. That was one of the earliest encounters that I had with Windows 98. And, while this is getting off topic, Windows 95 I also experienced around that time too, because they also had an old computer running Windows 95 too. Either way, let's go ahead and boot. Now I think you probably noticed that it took a little bit longer than usual, obviously, since as we downclocked the CPU. So let's go ahead into hardware info 32. And we'll go ahead and start it. So it's analyzing the devices and such. And now let's take a look at our CPU clock rates and such. And there we have it. And take a look at this. We are running at exactly half of the actual clock speed of this CPU. We're running at 466 megahertz with the CPU multiplier still set at times 7, x7 or whatnot. Intel Pentium 3 933 megahertz. Well, that's downclocked to 466 megahertz at 66 megahertz frontside bus speed. So we're running at a Mendocino Celeron 466 now. Which is the Mendocino Celeron 466 was pretty much only offered in a socketed form factor, obviously, because Mendocino Celerons came in, you know, cartridge-based slot factors, like slot 1, but they phased out with the Celeron 466. But with that out of the way, we did have this thing downclocked to that Mendocino Celeron processor, obviously. 466 at 66 frontside bus speeds. So now let's go ahead into Windows 2000 Professional. So we're booting into, well, we are going to boot into Windows 2000 Professional, so let's go ahead and do that right now. And even this too, this boot screen, as well as the one that said starting Windows, those two will never get old to me too. I mean, I've seen it multiple times, obviously too, especially with this boot screen in particular, because I seen it on my cousin's custom built computer that ran Windows 2000 and XP in the dual boot configuration. You know, that was also one of the first experiences and encounters that I had with Windows 2000, obviously. Even though Windows 2000 was targeted at the business and enterprise use at the time when it was released, there are still a few people, or at least a handful number of people that you know, cherish this operating system. Okay, so here we are on Windows 2000 Professional, and let's go into CPU ID, CPU Z, because that's just how I pronounce the Z on here. CPU Z, CPU Z, whatever you like to call it. Well, I usually pronounce it as CPU Z on here just because, yeah. Anyways, let's check. Yeah, nothing much on the identifier of the CPU. It's still identifying itself as a Pentium 3, 933 megahertz, but we are running at 466 megahertz at 66 megahertz frontside bus speeds. So pretty much, I pretty much downclocked this 933 megahertz Pentium 3 Compaq into a Mendocino Celeron 466, which is kind of odd if you can ask me, obviously. I mean, yeah. So let's go into hardware info 32 on here, and let's take a look. It's obviously going to be the same, obviously, as we checked on Windows 9X, because hardware info actually, well, hardware info runs on 9X systems, which that might include Windows 95, but I had not tested that out yet, not tried that out, but here we go. So once again, we're running at the literal half of the clock speed of this 933 megahertz Compaq CPU, 466 megahertz with the same times 7 ratio CPU multiplier, 466 megahertz clock speeds, and 66 megahertz frontside bus speeds. Yep. Pretty much the same as it is. Well, same results, obviously. It's just that we downclocked the CPU to this exact clock rate and such. And this is all accomplished just by setting those jumpers on this motherboard of the Intel Compaq, obviously. It couldn't be as simple as that, you know, as far as underclocking this Intel Compaq, obviously. But yeah. Oh, and one more thing before I go. I'm gonna be trying out seeing since we downclocked the CPU, I wonder if that affects some testing things, obviously. Now, obviously, this isn't a a good way to test to see the effects of the downclocking of the CPU, obviously, because like this is not locked to the CPU speeds and such. But let's try running a DX diag on here and going to display and such. Again, this isn't really necessary. I mean, let's try doing direct draw. I mean, it still looks fine, obviously, but like, if I can run it with like you know, like a benchmark that is tied to a CPU clock speed, then I would greatly see a difference. But it seems like here it's running as it should be, obviously. I mean, I kind of can't see any difference. Well, I don't know, but yeah, and then As for Direct 3D, that's gonna run on the... Whoa, that is run really fast. I never seen that run really fast like that. I mean, this one does have a... It has a GeForce 4 MX440 AGP8 speed card, but wow, that is running really fast than what I'm seeing from the GeForce. Well, not GeForce, but when I'm running this at 933 megahertz, I think. I'm not too sure if that's because I downclocked this CPU, or if it's because, well, it's running a different refresh rate or something like that, or I'm not too sure. But either way, that was just that simple benchmark that we just did. So yeah. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering about this little background right there, that is from the Cyborg Kudo-chan series, featuring the titular character himself and this little character on the right side, that's Nana-chan. Just wanted to bring that up just for those that are curious, because sometimes I get you know, some talks about this background. But anyways, that is it for this video, obviously, because that's basically what I have to show. All I have to show here as far as doing underclocking for this Intel Compaq. Couldn't be as simple as, you know, changing jumper settings on the front side bus speeds, obviously. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and change the front side bus speed back to 133 after this video is being recorded. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you all in the next one. See ya.